I don't do this enough, but I stumbled across a website purporting to provide ways for young apologists to catch the non-religious with their metaphorical pants down. Does it succeed? Well, let's go take a look and find out. I came across this website over on InterVarsity.com, which tries to tell young and inexperienced apologists pretty much how to lie for the Lord. I mean, how to deal with rational skeptics who demand evidence for the existence of their gods. Because we all know that there is no such thing, and the religious couldn't present it if they tried, so here they're told how to get around people asking perfectly rational questions that ought to have perfectly rational answers. The problem is, it doesn't work, and anyone with half a brain cell can see straight through their dishonest tactics. So, what happens when the religious entirely fail to have evidence for their beliefs? Absurdity, that's what. Don't we all want scientific, verifiable evidence that God exists? The seeming lack of evidence, can drive people to dismiss the possibility of God's existence, especially those with a more scientific or logical bent, and heaven forbid that happens. Christians, when confronted with the accusation that no tangible evidence of God exists, often find themselves confused because it sounds like an atheist throwing down the gauntlet. No, this isn't about wanting. I don't want scientific evidence that God exists. I require it. It isn't optional. If you want me to believe in your imaginary friend, you have to provide that evidence. Otherwise, I am not going to believe. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Evidence or no belief, period. And it's not just gods that this applies to. Anything that is supposed to exist in objective reality must also have evidence for its existence. Gods are not the exception to the rule. Evidence for everything or no belief. This isn't about the possibility of a God's existence. It's about the actuality of said God's existence. Theists don't proclaim that their gods are possible. They proclaim that they are real. Okay, prove it. Because yes, I am throwing down the gauntlet. Put up or shut up. Go ahead. Assumptions. Hard, tangible evidence that God exists is necessary to believe in God. And yes, for any rational person, it is. That just shows that the religious are not rational. They believe emotionally, not intellectually. It feels good, so they embrace it even though it makes no sense whatsoever. They want it to be true on emotional grounds. Therefore, they demand special dispensation for religious claims because facts get in the way of their feelings. This is nothing to be proud of. Hard, tangible evidence ought to be required to believe in anything. The fact that the religious don't do it only proves what a bunch of idiots the religious are. Whether evidence is hard or tangible can be determined objectively. Yep, because this isn't about God exists for me. That's an asinine statement. God either exists for everyone in the only objective reality that we have, or God is a pointless claim to make. Either the religious can prove that the God that they worship is real, or they are betraying themselves as emotionally driven morons who don't care about reality. And surprise, surprise, that's exactly what they are. I don't care if they like that idea. That is the fact as supportable from the evidence that we have at hand. It makes theists an intellectual embarrassment. God, if he exists, can be verified via hard, tangible means. All right, whether or not God can be, God must be for intelligent people to believe in him. I mean, let's just make up a nonsensical deity for the sake of an argument. Invisible, intangible, universe-creating pixies. So I can claim all day that these pixies are real. Do you believe me? Probably not. What basis do you have for taking my claim seriously? How do you propose to verify that what I'm saying is true? Because if you can't, what intellectually credible reasons do you have for believing any of it? It doesn't matter how the idea makes you feel. It doesn't matter if 90% of the planet believes in invisible, intangible, universe-creating pixies. It doesn't make a lick of difference if there was a book written 3,000 years ago claiming that the pixies are real. None of that actually provides a shred of evidence that the pixies have any existence whatsoever in objective reality. So, if you're going to be anything remotely rational rather than, an overly emotional idiot, how do you determine if the stories about the pixies are worth believing? Because no matter what excuse you can come up with, we are going to apply that to your own deity. No double standards allowed. Science is capable of evaluating matters of faith. Sorry, but faith is idiotic. It just is. I know you probably don't like that fact, but too bad. Because people can have faith in any asinine proposition, and in fact, they have. Flat Earth, anti-vax, faith healing, wishful thinking, talking to yourself. You name it, some moron has believed it on faith. And it isn't impressive no matter what you assign your faith to. The whole idea here is to do away with faith. Faith is the excuse that you give yourself to believe in things that you have no good reason to think are true. That is absolutely not something that you ought to be proud of. So now we move into their talking points, which, as should be no surprise, are uniformly terrible. They start off with an introduction that reads, "Begin with, what in your mind constitutes hard, tangible evidence that God exists?" Alternative wording, if God were to exist, what kind of hard, tangible evidence would you expect to find? You need to reach mutual agreement on the definition of hard, tangible evidence before you can have a meaningful conversation. Now, I've addressed that many times in the past. I will start with any hard, tangible evidence that your specific God is real. Any at all. Give me your best shot. Because you have absolutely nothing to present, which is why questions like this are so meaningless. Let's say that the atheist came up with a reasonable list of things that would convince them that a God, any God, is real. Big deal, since the theist still has absolutely nothing at all to offer. It doesn't matter what would convince me, it matters what exists. And guess what? No evidence exists. But hey, let's go on with their talking points. 1. Just because you can't find such evidence doesn't mean that God doesn't exist. Have you ever been in love before? There is no hard, tangible evidence for the existence of love, yet most of us would appeal to our life experience to say that we believe in love, highlighting the logical fallacy of, if there isn't evidence, then God doesn't exist. Alright, you're just completely wrong. Just because you can't find such evidence doesn't mean that those invisible, intangible, universe-creating pixies don't exist either. Are you going to believe in them? No? Well, that makes you a hypocrite. And this must have been done a long time ago, because we have had hard, tangible evidence for the existence of love for a very long time. fMRI scans can detect the brain activity that signifies love and hate and pretty much every other emotion. Why? Because emotions are just electrochemical reactions in the brain. It doesn't matter if the religious like that or not, it is what is demonstrably true. And of course, their highlight is laughable because it's a straw man. I don't know if many, if any, atheists who say that because there is no evidence for God, God can't be real. We say, because there is no evidence for God, we have no reason to believe that any gods are real. We will not believe without evidence. We don't reject the possibility that there could be gods out there somewhere any more than we reject the possibility that Bigfoot or space aliens could be out there someplace. They could be. We will just not believe in them until there's evidence. The moment there is, that's when we will believe. Number 2, God, as we typically picture him, is someone who has immense power and can do things that normal human beings cannot. God can break rules that we can't, such as defying death or gravity or time. In that case, then, God exists outside such rules, which means that he is also outside of scientific rules. Thus, to try to prove God using hard scientific evidence is a futile cause. God cannot be bound by such rules. Here, you are highlighting the impossibility of proving the supernatural from the natural. It is important, especially if the person is equating hard, tangible evidence with scientific evidence. All right, my immediate question is, who cares how you picture him? It only matters how he really is, if in fact he is at all. But if you have no evidence that God is real, how have you verified what he's really like? Making up and assigning arbitrary characteristics to this unproven deity of yours says nothing at all about God, other than proving that you've got an overactive imagination. How do you know that God can break rules that we can't? Where did you get that information? How did you test it? Because if you didn't, then I don't have any reason to take your unsupported claims about your imaginary friend seriously. Again, faith means nothing but gullibility. The highlight is asinine because there's no reason at all to think that the supernatural exists. You can't prove facts about reality through bald assertion. Come on back when you can prove that the supernatural is real in any objectively verifiable way. Your say-so doesn't impress anyone. Number 3. Although hard tangible evidence for God's existence may be hard to find, there are many other forms of evidence that have led scientists and philosophers to believe in God's existence. Then go on to share arguments such as intelligent design, the ontological argument, etc. Okay, sure. All of those are laughably absurd. Now, I've been over this before, but you can't prove anything about reality through philosophy. There is no means whatsoever of proving anything that exists in the real world is really there philosophically. It just can't be done. But the religious already admit that they have no evidence for their imaginary friends. Therefore, they turn to the only tool that they have in their bag of tricks and try desperately to misuse it. The fact is, I can make a perfectly valid syllogism that purports to demonstrate the existence of dragons. Guess what? It doesn't actually prove anything about dragons. All the philosophical arguments in the world won't make something that doesn't exist, or make something that is demonstrably real not real. Philosophy is not the tool for that job. But when you only have one tool, you use it for everything and wind up looking like a fool doing it. Number 4. Can you show me hard, tangible evidence that he doesn't exist? So, you see, both of our positions require faith. I think that given the intricate design of the universe and even our planet, maybe it takes less faith to believe God exists than that it all happened by chance. See the intelligent design argument from point 3. Yeah, when you can't hold up your end of the bargain, simply run around with the goalposts. It isn't our job to prove that your imaginary friend isn't real. If you fail to prove that he is, we will just walk away shaking our heads because you have made a fool of yourself. My position doesn't require faith because I'm not saying that your God isn't real. I'm saying that you have entirely failed in your responsibility to prove that he is. Therefore, I'm not going to take your unsupported and asinine claims seriously. If you come back later on with evidence, I will reevaluate my position and see if I can accept your arguments. It is completely on your shoulders and your shoulders alone to prove that you are right if you want to convince me to believe in your God. And I'm sorry to say, you aren't even close to succeeding. And finally, we come to number 5. We all want hard, tangible evidence that God exists, but over time, despite not having all of the evidence that I want, I've come to believe that God exists. Can I tell you why? Then bring up your reasons, especially ones such as how God has spoken to you, ways in which you've experienced God, etc. Scientific or philosophical evidence can be challenged, but your personal experience cannot be disputed. Thus, this type of personal evidence may be even more powerful and convincing. All right, here's the reality. I don't care why. The fact that you are an irrational fool doesn't impress me, and it shouldn't impress you, because nothing you presented here is remotely rational. You can't prove that God spoke to you objectively. You can't prove anything objectively. It's all wishful thinking and faith-based nonsense. Your personal experiences won't convince anyone but you. I could say that, hey, I had a personal experience with Bobo the tree god, and you can't prove I didn't. That doesn't mean that I did, though. It's an unsupported claim, and you would be absolutely justified in thinking that I was crazy if I said that, just like I think you're crazy if you start claiming to have powwows with magical men in the sky. It's not a credible claim. I'm telling you that I don't believe it ever happened because you can't prove to me that it did. You are either lying, or you're delusional, or there's something else wrong with you. I don't care if that makes you sad. It is the most rational explanation for what you're saying. You have to prove to me that your claim is valid, and we all know you can't do that. You're stuck in the crazy zone, and you don't seem to care. I mean, honestly, what's wrong with you? The problem with all of these evangelism and apologetics guides is that they're just not based in reality. They are all bald assertions run amok. It's taking a straw man, and let's be honest, that's what all of these are, and then trying to twist them to such a degree that you can squeeze an argument out of them if you just don't think about it too hard. All of these are dishonest, every single last one of them. They aren't really responding to the demand for evidence. They are trying to get around the demand for evidence. They know that they've got no evidence for anything they believe. If they did, they'd just present it and be done with it. Instead, they try to rationalize away why they have nothing to show for their beliefs, and they expect other people to take them seriously. Yeah, too bad it doesn't work that way, huh?